Welcome to another revision program of the Bachelor of Information Technology Web Application Development 1 module. My name is Hakim Yusuf and I am the coordinator of this particular IT1305 module. So over the last few programs we have talked about Internet and the World Wide Web, HTML5 and CSS. So today we are going to talk about JavaScript, and basically if you want the version we are going to talk about JavaScript 1.8 and above. So let's look at what is JavaScript initially. So JavaScript is basically called a client-side programming for use for client-side programming. So if you look at what is client-side programming, that means that the JavaScript will not actually run at the server end, but it will actually run on the client's browser. So your browser has to be compatible and have JavaScript support so that you are able to run JavaScript on your browser. And what JavaScript basically does is it provides a lot of ability and make websites dynamic, and also offloads some of the data or the processing that is required to be done on the server to the client side to help ease the communication between the client's browser and the web server. So let's look at what is expected from you in this particular topic, the skills and the learning outcomes that you should achieve. The first one is describe the basic syntax, variables, operators and primitives in JavaScript. So this is probably the first time you are actually going to work with a programming language in the BIT course. So JavaScript is actually a programming language, so you will need to know the syntax, the format of the script, what are variables, what are the operators available, the primitives, the already available functions and operations in JavaScript, so that you are able to effectively use JavaScript when you are doing web application development. So you need to first understand this. So that's the first learning outcome. The next one is explain event handling in JavaScript, how we are going to handle certain events. Now since it's running on the client side, for example, you can, on the loading of a page, you can actually have an event where the JavaScript is triggered, because you need to trigger the JavaScript functions so that something happens on the client browser, or when you click on a button you can trigger JavaScript. So basically you need to know how events are handled in JavaScript. The next learning outcome is employ JavaScript in combination with CSS. So you are able to dynamically change the visual effect of a web application or a website or a web page using both JavaScript and CSS and of course HTML. And finally develop a website employing HTML and CSS, which you've already learned, and JavaScript to create a dynamic website which uses HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So those are the main outcomes and the ultimate skill that you will need to be able to do at the end of this particular course. So let's move on to the revision, and let's look at the first question in the 2015 IT1305 paper. The first question is, which of the following are valid identifiers in JavaScript? So if you look at when you define variables, because there are some reserved words, some rules when giving a variable a name and things like that, so you need to know those rules when defining variables. So var, for example, is a reserved word in JavaScript which is used to define variables. So var x means you are defining a variable named x. So var cannot be used as an identifier or a variable, because var is a keyword that is used to define variables. So var cannot be used as an identifier. $var, for example, can be used because the dollar symbol can be used to define a variable. So you can always start with $var, which means $var is the name of the variable. So B is actually correct. You cannot use hyphens and such symbols, so C is incorrect. So hyphen var is actually wrong. you cannot use numbers to start variables with. You can of course use var1, which means variable 1, that is okay, but one var cannot be used because you cannot use numbers to start identifiers or variables with, and so D is incorrect. And x var, capital or simple X, that's okay because you can use alphanumeric characters, alphabetical characters to start variable names with. So x var is actually correct. So B and E are correct while A, C and D are incorrect. To look at the next question, first let us look at a code sample. So here it is defined var my variable 1 10 colon variable my variable 2 25, variable 3 is 50, my variable 4 is 100 and my variable 5 is 20. So they are basically assigned values 10, 25, 50, 100 and 200. So what the question, implying question from this is going to do is whether you know your operator correctly, whether you have learned your operators correctly. So let's look at V1 is a variable. So you always don't have to define var variable name, but you can also simply define V1, V2, V3 and V4 and they will be identified as variables in JavaScript because JavaScript is very flexible. So if you look at, it's basically talking about modulus. The modulus of my variable 2 being divided by my variable 1. So the remainder would be 5. So V1 should be 5. V2 would be my variable 1 plus plus. Now plus plus is used for incrementing. But the thing is V2 is assigned my variable value 1 before it is incremented. So my variable 1 will be actually 10. My variable 3 plus equals. So you are basically adding my variable 3 to my variable 2 and making it equal to my variable 3. Variable 3 is equals minus minus. So now while you are equaling it, you are also subtracting. Minus minus means subtracting 1 from my variable 2, and V4 is basically a string and not values. So let's look at the questions originating from this. Which of the following statements are true with respect to the JavaScript code given above? The value of variable V1 is 2.5. It is actually not 2.5, it is 5. So A is incorrect. The value of variable V2 is 11, which is actually incorrect because you increment 10 after you assign V2 the value. But if you had incremented the value and then assigned it, then it would be 11. So here you are doing it after, so it has already been assigned to V2. So B is also incorrect. The value of variable my variable 3 is 75, which is correct because you are adding 25 to 50 and assigning it to the same variable that previously had the 50 value. So now you have 75 in it. The value of variable 3 is 24 because before assigning you are basically subtracting from the variable an amount of 1. So you are going to have 24 instead of 25. And the value of variable 4 is 300, which is also incorrect because variable 4 is basically you are adding two strings. So you will have the value 100, 200 together. So it will be 100200 and not 300 because you are basically assigning a string value to this new segment or the variable 4. Let's look at the next question, question number 39 in your exam paper. Which of the following statements are true with respect to JavaScript built-in global functions? So you have certain functions that are already available in JavaScript that have been predefined. For example, alert, prompt, confirm, not a number, number, pass int, pass float. For example, those are some of the functions. And it's also important to remember that you cannot use these function names as variables because they are also kind of reserved in JavaScript. So let's look at the global functions. The alert function will display a message box with a given message and an OK button. So alert will basically display a box which tells you, because it's giving you a message, and then by clicking the OK button it will close. So that is the alert function, and that's the type of message box that it will display. Now it is important that you have done this, that you have run these functions to actually know the visual display of these particular functions. The prompt function will display a message box with a given message, a text box, and an OK button. Now the thing is, you have a given message, you have a text box, you have an OK button, but the prompt function also has a cancel button. So that is not mentioned here, so B is actually incorrect. The confirm button basically has not only a cancel button but also has a OK button. So it has a message, an OK button and a cancel button. So the OK button is missing in this answer, so C is incorrect. If you look at option D, the number will convert alphanumeric strings into a number. For example, if you have a string called 200, 200 will be actually displayed in, be converted into a numeric value of 200. If you have 10.33 as a string value, it will be converted into a 10.33 value. The same goes for the parse int. For example, if you have 10.33, it will convert into an integer value, because you can't have decimal points in integer values. You will have 10.33. So out of 10.33, the first integer value, that is 10, will be assigned or converted into a numerical value. But if you have parse float, for example, 10.33 will be converted into 10.33 numerical value. So you can basically use number, parse float to convert string values into numerical values. But if you have for example year 2012 as the string value, year cannot be converted into a number value or a parse int value or a parse float value. So you will basically get not a number message in your JavaScript. So that is very important to note. So you need to know how to use these inbuilt global functions. So let's look at question number 40 in your 2015 paper. Which of the following are string literals? So basically, if you look at the first option, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 is usually a numerical value, but when you put it in double quotes, it becomes a string value. True is actually not a string literal, because true and false are Boolean values and they are reserved words in JavaScript. So true is not a string literal, it's a logical literal. If you look at C, now it's in single quotes. Now JavaScript allows for single quotes and double quotes. So Colombo put in single quotes is actually a string literal. The same goes for double quotes, candy, which is a string in double quotes, and /n, which basically means a new line, is also in double quotes, so that is also a string. So you can use this to kind of create strings which you require for your JavaScript. Let's look at a code sample. So here in HTML there's a head section, and in the head section there's a script tag which is JavaScript type, and we have defined variables w, b and h as equal to 0, 0 and 0. So let's look at the question originating from this. Question number 41. Which of the following statements are true with respect to the variable w, b and h? The variables are declared as global variables. So if you look at it, it's right after or outside any function. It's in the script function of the JavaScript, but it is outside any function. So they are declared as global variables. So it is important to know your scoping of variables within JavaScript. The next one is, if the variables were not declared before use, then JavaScript will not function correctly. That's incorrect, because JavaScript you can use define variables and initialize them, or you can just use variables whenever you need them. You can create new variables. So JavaScript is very flexible in that sense. If the parameters of the function, the cal declared as w, b and h instead of width, breadth and height, so we'll move on to that code later. width, breadth and height, the JavaScript would still function correctly. So that is also true. I'll show you why it is true in the next part of code. And which of the following statements are true with respect to variables w, b and h again? Option D, as the variables are initialized with the integer value 0, float values will not be accepted if entered in the prompt. So now you are prompting to get values into w, b and h, and if you enter what you call float values, that is values with decimal points, JavaScript is flexible that it only allocates variable reference, and you can write, if you initialize it to integer, you can still write float values or string values or logical values or boolean values into those particular variables. So it is not restricted that it only allocates for the initialized variable type. If the variables are declared in the getVal function, this JavaScript will function correctly. So that also will go to that particular code. So if the variables are declared as local variables within the getVal function, yet it will function correctly because the local variables are used to call another function, and the function's parameters are defined as these particular variables. So let us go to that code and look at it in that particular sense. So before that, we also need to look at which of the following functions can be used to determine whether a value is numerical. Now the important thing is you can use certain functions, built-in functions in JavaScript, to do certain tasks, and you need to know what these functions are because these are the main functions that you can use. So for example, none or not a number can be easily used because it will give a response back as true or false. So if it not a number is true, then what you get is that the number you have given into the function is actually not a number but a string value or something like that. But if it's false, that means not a number will actually say that it is actually a number, because not a number checks the negative of whether it is a number or not. Parse int won't actually check if something is a number or not. It will basically convert a string numerical value into an integer value. Number will do the same thing, will actually evaluate functions, but it won't check if something is a number or not. Parse float will actually convert a string into a float value and not into checking whether it is a number or not. So A is the only correct answer. So this is the code we were talking about in the previous question. The function calls, you have width, breadth and height, and you are checking if the height is a volume. So you are basically going to enter three values in a prompt like in this particular code. So if w, b and h were defined inside getValue, or it wasn't defined previously, then there is still no difference because w, b and h are used in the getValue function and they are used to pass parameters into the previous code, which I am going to go back to, that is for the width, breadth and height. But if width, breadth and height were still using global variables w, b and h, then also this function would work. So that's the answer to the previous question we were talking about. If you remember the previous code, or if you have the paper with you, question 43, which of the following would be displayed if no values were entered for any of the prompts? So if no value was entered into the prompts, the volume is 0 wouldn't work. The volume is not a number wouldn't work because by default it will take the 0 values. The area is 0, it will work because the function basically, if we go back to that question, the function is basically if height is equal to 0, then it will actually only calculate the area, and that is the width into the breadth. So it will basically go to the area is 0, that is correct. The area is not a number won't work, and JavaScript error won't also be an issue because there is no JavaScript error if you don't enter a value into the prompt. If you look at question 44, which of the following non-numerical value was entered? So an error message will be displayed. It won't be displayed because a non-numerical value, JavaScript knows to handle such variables, there is no problem. It will basically, it's not a number, either the volume is not a number or the area is not a number will be displayed. So B is the correct answer. The browser won't stop responding, nor will it prompt a display again, and the calculation will be done using only entered numerical values. That is also won't happen. So B is the correct answer for this particular question. Next, if you move on to question 45, in which of the following sections could this script be inserted to function correctly? You can insert scripts either as an external file or in the HTML part or in the body section of a HTML document. It doesn't matter where you have it. So if you insert it in the body section of the document, it still works. Export it as an external JavaScript file, it will work in the header section, because that's where you generally export JavaScripts. An external JavaScript file linked in the body you don't generally import in the body section. Let's look at question number 46. Which of the following are reserved words in JavaScript? So like I told you before, you need to know what are the built-in functions, the built-in syntax, the variables that are used, the keywords. So you need to know what are the reserved words in JavaScript. So if you look at false, false is a Boolean value. It can be either true or false. So false is a reserved word. Execute is not a reserved word because there is no function defined for execute. Break is a reserved word because you use it for future when you do more complex JavaScript programming, you will be using the break function. Class is also defined in JavaScript because you can define classes in JavaScript, and not a reserved word, but rather you use the exclamation mark when you want to use the not option in JavaScript. So to answer the next question, let's go to a code sample. Now if you look at this code sample, you will see this is the ultimate goal of your studying HTML, CSS and JavaScript, where you are able to combine all three and do different visual and programming changes in a dynamic web application. So this combines both JavaScript and CSS and also HTML. So let's look at the first option, button 1, and on click of this button, my function 1 will be executed, and my function 1 is described as a JavaScript function. So my function 1 does it will get variable x, will get the value document.getElement by tag name, style 0. So if there is a style defined, it will get that style and assign it to the x variable, and if you look at it, it's assigned with a inner HTML. So if you look at document.getElement by ID demo1, which is basically a paragraph text, you are going to insert between the open paragraph and the closed paragraph tag whatever HTML that is inside the x variable. So any HTML inside the x variable is going to be inserted in the paragraph ID demo1. So that is what you are going to have happening. So if you look at question number 47, which of the following will occur when button 1 is clicked? A paragraph with the ID demo1 will be populated with red colored text h1 color white. That is incorrect. Paragraph with ID demo will be populated with red colored text, body background color black, color red. That is the correct answer, even though this particular slide shows that's the incorrect answer. Paragraph with demo ID 1 will be populated with the white colored text, which is incorrect because you are referring to the style 0. So any style that is first defined will be allocated in that particular style array. The next one is paragraph with ID demo 1 will be populated with red color text, body background color black, color red, and hash my H1 color white. That is incorrect because only body background color red will be populated. My H1 is another style, so it won't be in the array style 0, it will be in another array. Paragraph with the ID demo 1 will not be populated. That is incorrect because there is some HTML in the variable x that we define, and that is going to populate the paragraph with the ID demo 1. To answer the next question, let's look at this particular sample code. So here you have a button 2, and on click of that button 2 it's going to execute the function my function 2, which is basically where y is allocated the style and the particular color of my H1. So the header 1, which is given the color white, if you look at header 1 ID my H1 style color equals white, is going to be allocated to the variable y. So when you define document get element ID demo 2 inner HTML equals y, y already has the value white because that is a particular color. It doesn't have an inner HTML, it has a white color value, a string value allocated. So if you look at the paragraph ID demo 2, it's going to populate that when this button 2 is clicked. So if you look at the answers for question 48, which of the following will occur when button 2 is clicked? So it is answer A, because paragraph with demo 2 will be populated with red colored text because the body text is red, and the text will be the word string word white. So the other answers are incorrect. So since you have this code, the important thing to notice is question 48 will not have multiple answers, but if you use your analytical skills you will realize they will have only one single answer, because a button click can only do a certain single task and that is listed here, and so you will only have one particular answer. And to answer the final set of questions, button on click my function 3 will basically document dot get element by ID my H1 style color will now change to green. So when you click button 3, basically the text of header 1 with the ID my H1 will change to green. So that is the correct answer. So these are incorrect answers. And then our final question in this set of programs or this revision set, question number 15, your 2015 exam paper, which of the following will occur when button 2 is clicked after clicking button 3? Now what is important to know is when button 3 is clicked, the header 1 will become green color. So if you click button 2 again, instead of white as in question number 48, what you are going to get is green, because header 1 has now been allocated the color green. So the correct answer for this is paragraph with the ID demo 2 will be populated with red color text and the string or the word green. So that is the correct answer, and again A, C, D and E are incorrect. So thank you very much for being with us, and hope you did learn a lot during these 4 sessions that we had, and hope that these do help you to answer the examination paper better, and it also helps you to be analytical when you're answering questions in IT1305 exam. Thank you very much.